Hey DawnforgedCast, I don't think I've done a reply to you in a while. Anyway, this is a reply video to your question about social skills versus PCs. Is it legit? Now this is a terrific and difficult question, and right as you posed it, everybody started talking about pacing. So it's mostly been ignored, but I wanted to make sure that I covered this a little bit. Now, as you know, I cover things from a very broad perspective. Usually I play a lot of different games, and a lot of the games I play don't have any mechanic whatsoever for player versus player conflict. You either have to role play it out as a group, or nothing. There's no way to go to the dice on it, at least no way included in the game. And that's usually because the game is not about that type of conflict. But I've played games that are entirely on the other side of the coin. While a lot of your GM-less games like Shock or Durance have mechanics to resolve a player versus player conflict in every scene, what you're probably talking about is a little bit more akin to something like Burning Wheel. And Burning Wheel has the Duel of Wits mechanic. And how this works is that you and I disagree on something, we agree to an argument about it, and you don't ever have to. You're never forced into this mechanicized argument. And we kind of have a verbal debate, we spar, and at the end of it we look at it and go like, okay, I won the argument, but you made some really good points. You damaged the body of argument that I created, and I have to make concessions to you. Or maybe you didn't, and I don't have to make concessions to you. And people can walk away from it. It's considered very dishonorable to walk away from something that you promised to do as a result of an argument, whatever the case might be. But it is a very interesting mechanic, and it's a great way to actually handle that in a way that is fair to everybody involved, at least as much as you can make it. Another really good one is Apocalypse World, and Apocalypse World does not have a I'm going to make you do a thing move exactly. It'll have read a person, and that will allow me to ask you, the player, how could I get your character to do this? Or what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Etc. And that's an interesting way to facilitate the conversation. It'll also allow me to seduce or manipulate a person, and that, again, doesn't force them to do something if it's referred to another player character. It merely says, okay, if you do what I want, and like, for example, it's assuming I succeeded in my role, if you do what I want, you get experience. Or if you don't do what I want, you have to make a roll to be able to do it, or you're making life worse for yourself. Or if I'm really good, both. But of course you're looking at this from a Pathfinder perspective, and that's a very traditional game, and it follows a lot of traditional game rules. Actually, a debate about this came up some years ago. I believe it was the RPPR people that run that podcast, who had a game where at the end of the game the one person wanted to use their social skills to get everybody else to do something that would change the way that the entire game ended. And it turned into a really big and interesting debate. But I'll just give you my side on things. So what you're talking about here, diplomacy, bluff, intimidate, charm person, it is typically a single roll or maybe two, and then you completely influence a person. It's kind of a clumsy mechanic when we really look at it that way, that human interaction doesn't usually work that way. As good as I am at convincing you to do something, the best I can do, for the most part, is make you more want to do something that you already want to do. But there are major problems with using this on other player characters. On an NPC it doesn't matter as much, but with a player character you're taking away that player's agency in the world. They may as well just hand you their character sheet. And that's probably why the book says no. After all, why are the other players at the table if somebody else can just force their hand with a good roll? But the counter argument to this is that it's on your character sheet. I can hit you with my sword, why can't I use my social skills on your character? And while that's a decent argument, it doesn't really affect the agency. It doesn't affect the player's freedom. After all, if you hit me with your sword, you might kill me, but if you puppet my character, that's, at least for me, going to bother me even more. But you want my opinion on it? Here's my ultimate answer. Go ahead and let them do whatever they want. If a player comes at the table and they're playing the bard with a really high social skill and they start taking all control of all the other characters, you have learned very easily in one session not to invite that person back. So go ahead, let them do whatever they want. If somebody turns into a really terrible person to be at the table as soon as they have a little bit of power, you know not to game with them. Once again, DawnforgedCast, thank you for the question. I very much enjoyed tackling this issue.